We are learning Mishnah's Kesubos. Parak Ches, chapter 8, Mishnah Ches, Mishnah 8. All right, so we have been discussing in the previous Mishnahs about when a Yavim performs Yibum on his sister-in-law and he inherits his brother's estate, that the Kesuba from the first husband carries over to this marriage. And we spoke about all the different, in the previous Mishnah, I spoke about the different laws that apply to that. Now the Mishnah says something that's going to apply to whether the case is a Yavim or any husband. So the Mishnah reads, Lo Yoyim Allah, the husband, or in the Yavim in this case, may not say to his wife, Harei Kesubasich munachas ala shulchan, behold, your Kesuba is sitting here on the table. That's an expression of saying that I'm setting aside this for your Kesuba. Meaning, until now we've been saying that he can't go ahead and sell the properties from his brother-in-law, from his brother's estate, because they're all pledged towards her Kesuba. So now what he wants to do here is he wants to go ahead and say, I'm going to designate monies, property, whatever it is. I'm going to designate something here for your Kesuba. It's set aside for that. This, don't worry, this will be untouched. You want to make sure that you'll have where to collect your Kesuba from. Here it is. He's not paying it yet, but he's saying that he's setting aside something designated solely for the purposes of her Kesuba. Okay, and with the rest of this stuff, he wants to sell it. So the Mishnah says he can't do that. All his property, meaning in this case, meaning the property that he inherited from his brother, are all considered pledged towards her Kesuba. He cannot go ahead and just take a certain amount and say, this is for your Kesuba, it's designated for that. Can't do that. So to a person shouldn't say to his wife. This means not in the case of Yibum. In a regular case, in a regular marriage. He also may not say, behold, the Kesuba is put on the table. Meaning, again, I'm designating, whatever it may be, I'm designating this for your Kesuba. But rather, again, all his properties are considered pledged towards her Kesuba. And all the relevant halachas about that we had in the previous Mishnayos. Now, why can't he do this? What's the matter?
Nothing. It's very...
Why can't he do this? So we explain here, neither a Yavim or an ordinary husband is allowed to designate specific property for his wife's Kesuba, because that would cause resentment. She would feel that he hates her and wants to divorce her. Like, what's he doing this for? It's not. It doesn't seem good, and therefore the Chachamim say he may not do that. Okay, now Girsha. Let's say he divorces her. Okay, we're going back in the case of a Yavim. He did perform Yibum, and then he decided Girsha, he's going to divorce her. Ein la Ksubasa. The only thing she has rights to is the amount of her Ksuba from her first husband. Meaning, even though until now all the properties of that estate were pledged towards her Ksuba, but when time comes to collect the Ksuba, all she gets is the Ksuba amount. Now that's really something that is really obvious, but the point of the Mishnah, as I bring down here from the Tosfos Yontif, the point of the Mishnah here is to teach, by way of implication, that before he divorces her, he is forbidden to sell any of the brother's properties. Meaning, when he divorces her and he's paying her Kesuba, all she gets is her Kesuba. And then he can go ahead and do with the properties whatever he wants, because he inherited it. But the implication of this is that now all she has is her Kesuba. But until then, all his properties, all the properties of that he inherited from his brother, are pledged towards her Kesuba, and he may not sell them. They're in a case of somebody who let's say, I owe somebody money, and that means that my properties are pledged towards paying that debt. I'm still allowed to sell my properties. And if I do, you have a right to go to the basin and take it away from the buyer, because they're pledged to you first. But in the case here of Yibam, we don't say that. In the case here by the Yavama, we say, and maybe it's, and not only by Yavama, by any woman, when it comes to what's pledged towards her Ksuba, that is something that the husband cannot just go ahead and sell. Now, Hechazira. Let's say the case here is that, again, the Yavim had divorced her, and now he's taking her back. Harei kachal hanoshim, she is like all women. Now, we had something like this before. In this context, it means the following. If let's say a man was married and he divorced his wife, which means now he has to pay a ksuba. Before he paid the ksuba, they got back together. So it's a new marriage. Maybe a new marriage should have a new ksuba with maybe some different agreements. The answer is no. When a person takes back his wife, he takes her back on the assumption that the original ksuba will suffice for the second marriage as well. That is the assumption. That is what everyone should assume, and that's the halacha. Our Mishnah is saying the same thing when it comes to the case of Yibum, where the brother-in-law had done Yibum, and then he divorced her, which at that point he was supposed to pay the ksuba from the brother's estate. Then decided to get back, which we said in yesterday's Mishnah they're allowed to do. So there too, the Mishnah is saying the assumption is that the new marriage is working back with the same conditions of the first ksuba, which means that even in this remarriage, if she wants to collect the ksuba, she can only collect the ksuba from the property that he inherited from his brother. Those were the conditions before. Those were the conditions that go over. And the Bartanura says that the reason the Mishnah here speaks this out is because you could have made the following argument. You could have said, if a person marries a woman and he makes up to give her a ksuba, and they divorce and they go back, okay, the assumption is what we made up before, we'll do it again. But by Yibam, nobody made up anything. By Yibam was done. Automatically, he took over the brother's estate, and the ksuba passed on. Maybe now, when he is remarrying her, which is his choice, right? He's not doing it anymore because of an obligation of Yibam. This is now a regular choice to marry a woman. He's remarrying his sister and he did Yibam on. But now we're having a brand new marriage. Maybe here we would say that the assumption is that we're going to have a new ksuba. We're going to work differently. We're not going to work like old, where you can only collect a ksuba from the previous brother's estate. Maybe now where it's just a regular remarriage, we say it's a whole new ksuba, and he can even his own properties are pledged towards the ksuba. So the Mishnah is saying, it's not that way. This is like this also works on the assumption of we're working what we had in the previous marriage. In the previous marriage, which was a Yibam marriage, she could only collect from the brother's estate. So too even now in the remarriage. She's like all women, and all she's entitled to is her original ksuba, which means the ksuba that carried on from the first marriage, which means she may collect only from the property her husband inherited from his brother. Have a wonderful day.
As soon as you said it in the beginning,